Picture walking through a mist-covered forest, where the morning sun pierces fragile cobwebs hanging between ancient oaks, and the air is thick with the scent of damp earth and moss. In this realm between shadow and light, where every rustle might be a whispered secret or an unseen presence, there once lived beings unlike any other, beings forged of iron, yet breathed with a soul. These were the Iron People, creatures that seem impossible at first, as if the earth itself had cracked open and given birth to walking, thinking metal. But no, this was no mere fantasy. These are voices from the forgotten depths of human imagination and memory. These beings once filled our stories, shaped the fears and hopes of entire communities, and guarded ancient knowledge. Yet now, they have all but vanished from our collective awareness, relegated to dusty pages in old scrolls or whispered only in isolated villages. So what were they really? And why did they disappear? This might be the strangest thing about the Iron People. They were not cold, soulless automatons as we might picture. Instead, they blended the strength of iron with the warmth of life, embodying paradoxes that challenge modern logic. Folklorists have long wondered, were these ancient myths trying to describe real beings, symbolic concepts, or metaphors for human resilience? To understand this, one must first hear the oldest tale told about them, recorded in the rugged highlands of 10th century Scandinavia, preserved in the sagas stitched together from frost and fire. Listen closely, as if you were sitting beside a crackling fire, the night sky draped with stars like scattered embers in black velvet. An old chieftain's voice rises, recounting the story of Jernman, the Iron Man, who emerged from the heart of a mountain during a fierce winter when hunger and despair gripped the land. Farmers had lost their crops to unrelenting frost, and wolves prowled closer than ever before. One night, as the northern lights danced eerie green flames across the horizon, Jernman first appeared, stepping down the snowy slope with creaking joints that echoed like distant thunder. Villagers initially feared him, for his skin gleamed like molten metal, eyes glowing faintly with a blue fire that held both wisdom and sorrow. But in no time, they discovered Jernman's purpose, protecting them from evil spirits and wild beasts, mending broken tools with a single touch and bringing hope when all seemed lost. Why metal? Why iron? A young boy had once asked the chieftain. With a knowing smile, the elder replied, "Iron is the blood of the earth, strong as a father's embrace, yet it bends and shapes with our will." Jernman carries this strength, but he remembers what it means to be human. This should be no surprise. Many ancient cultures celebrated iron not just as a tool or weapon, but as a symbol of transformation and endurance. The Iron People embodied this dual nature. They were the first firefighters, sensing smoke long before anyone else, the original environmental activists keeping the balance between wilderness and settlement. Imagine them as nature's version of security cameras, silently watching, ready to step in when the fragile threads of human life threatened to unravel. But the Iron People were more than just guardians forged of metal. They were stories woven into the very identity of the communities that believed in them. In the mist-shrouded valleys of Old Wales during the 12th century, chroniclers like Gerald of Wales mentioned mighty statues walking in the deep woods, a metaphor many today interpret as spirits or ancestral protectors. Yet folklore suggests these were no ordinary spirits. These were the Iron People, shaped by smiths and storytellers alike, forged from a blend of myth, metallurgy, and human hope. Grimm's collection echoes this concept in Germanic lands, where tales of living statues and ironclad knights recall the presence of beings that stood between humanity and the chaos of untamed nature. Catherine Briggs, a revered folklorist, noted how these stories often surfaced during times of social upheaval. When people faced uncertainty, the Iron People served as medieval social workers, offering protection, advice, and sometimes harsh lessons. What these tales really reveal is a deep human need to find strength beyond flesh and bone, to envision resilience as something tangible, something to call upon in dark hours. In ancient times, communities lived precariously close to danger, whether from harsh weather, famine, or invading enemies, and the Iron People walked among them as living emblems of enduring hope. But why iron? This reveals something deeper about human psychology and cultural symbolism. Iron is a curious element. It rusts, it degrades, yet never truly disappears, recycling through the earth and our creations across centuries. Like human memories passed down through storytelling, iron holds the past firmly, yet evolves with each retelling and reforging. The Iron People symbolize this continuous cycle, decay and renewal, mortality and immortality entwined. Imagine the forge's heat, the clang of hammer on anvil, sparks flying like ancient stars, and the smell of burning coal filling small smithies nestled in villages across Europe and Asia. In these fires, blacksmiths were not just making plowshares and swords, but weaving the very fabric of culture. The Iron People were the living reflections of these smiths' craft, mixtures of skill, art, and a touch of magic. They remind us that creativity and survival share the same flame. Yet beneath this behavior lay another layer of meaning. The Iron People were often depicted with regrets and grudges. Stories whispered late at night translate into cautionary tales. Consider the tale from 14th century Japan, where the Tetsujin, literally Iron Man, was a protective guardian who, when angered or betrayed, would cause iron tools to malfunction or rivers to flood, wreaking havoc on those who disrespected nature's or community's laws. This reveals a sacred contract between humans and their environment, a pact often forgotten in the rush of modern life. Here, the Iron People served as the original environmental activists, reminding people that misuse of natural resources had consequences woven into the spirit world. In this sense, they acted like ancient therapy sessions, challenging communities to confront their faults, adapt, and grow lest dire punishment follow. But there is more to this story found in the disappearing traditions. Why did belief in the Iron People fade? The stories tell us something else about changes in society, about the rise of industrialization, scientific worldview, and urban expansion. As the world turned from ancient forests and mountain shadows to steel cities and glowing screens, the Iron People retreated into folklore, their legends dimmed by progress. In the quiet corners of rural England and Ireland during the 18th century, old tales were still told, but with a new tone, often tinged with irony or disbelief. The Industrial Revolution ironically brought iron into everyday life, but stripped it of its mystique. No longer alive with soul, iron became cold and ordinary, tools mass-produced rather than magic-born protectors. Folklore gave way to science, and with it went the intimate relationship between humans, metal, and myth. Imagine standing in a forge now, the heat replaced by hum of machines, smoke by sterile air. The transformation mirrors a collective loss, something precious slipping through our fingers in the rush to modernity. Folklorists like Juliet Cluttenbrock have pointed out how myths like these encode ancestral wisdom about living in harmony with the environment and community. When that wisdom fades, so too does our connection to deeper truths hidden in everyday materials. And herein lies the bittersweet wonder of the Iron People. Their stories are not merely about mythical creatures, but about ourselves, about our longing for strength when fragile, protection when vulnerable, and connection when isolated. These tales call to a time when humans and the elements were entwined, when metal was more than inanimate matter, but a vessel of memory, challenge, and hope. So as the mist lifts from forgotten forests and the old fires fade across distant hills, we are left to ask, what might it mean for us today to be forged like the Iron People, to carry strength with warmth, to honor the past while shaping the future, to listen once more to the quiet clang in the smithy's heart, and remember that beneath every tool and every story lies a spark of the divine. Stay with me, for the next part of this journey will explore the enigmatic origins of their forge, reveal hidden rituals that breathed life into iron, and uncover the lasting influence of these mighty beings on art, mythology, and modern culture. Because the story of the Iron People is not just about the past, it is a living legend, waiting to be reforged in our souls. Now let us step deeper into the shadows between worlds, where firelight flickers and ancient echoes linger still. The story of Jernman, the Iron Man, does not end with his arrival. Far from being a mere protector, he was the spark to a legacy, a living forge from which the entire tribe of Iron People emerged, shaped by ritual, spirit, and the primal need for survival. This might be the strangest thing about these beings. They were not born but forged, not simply creatures but vessels, alive through the marriage of human will and elemental power. In the far reaches of the Carpathian Mountains, around the 9th century, old chronicles whisper of the forging ritual, a secret rite held in caves where blackened stone met molten iron. Here, master smiths and shamans gathered, chanting incantations that blended science and spirit. The air was heavy with the scent of burning resin and sweat, the clang of hammer on anvil keeping time with an ancient heartbeat. Into this sacred fire, iron was poured and shaped, but more than metal was inserted. Essence of earth, breath of wind, the pulse of ancestral spirits. The result was no mere statue, but a living guardian, attuned to the balance of nature and human need. One tale from this region, recorded by a wandering monk in 1024, tells of a young apprentice named Ivar, who witnessed the forging of his first iron person. When the final strike rang through the cavern, the monk wrote, the figure's eyes glowed faintly, and a deep voice like grinding stones whispered promises of protection and patience. Villagers who lived nearby swore the creature walked among them, mending fences, warding off wolves, and offering silent counsel through its sturdy presence. It was as if the mountain itself had sent an iron heartbeat to guard our fragile lives, Ivar remembered. But there is more to this story. The forging was never simple or safe. Blacksmiths told of a price, a cost paid in pain and sacrifice. To breathe life into iron meant risking that it might harden too much, becoming brittle and cruel, or too soft, losing its strength altogether. If the ritual failed, the iron person might become a restless specter, restless and vengeful, bound to neither metal nor flesh but trapped between. In this, the iron people served as living metaphors for balance, for the necessity of embracing both strength and flexibility in the face of hardship. They were as fragile as they were formidable. This subtle tension bifurcates their symbolism, on one hand, embodying protection, resilience, and the comfort of permanence. On the other, warning against rigidity, coldness, or the loss of compassion. The iron people were not idols of brute force, but teachers whispering through the ages. To survive, one must bend without breaking, remember the warmth within. Yet the iron body did not fully shield them from human emotion. Legends tell of the sorrow etched in their metal faces, a grief born from eternal witness to human frailty, war, and loss. In 13th century northern Italy, a chronicler named Guido de Camo wrote of Ferruomo, the Iron Man whose tears would become rivers flowing through the valleys, reminding villagers of their shared pain and the cost of unyielding pride. The story went, after witnessing the fall of his people to invading armies, Ferruomo's iron heart cracked, their anguish seeping into the land itself. It was said no smith could mend his broken form, but neither would he surrender his vigil. This duality, strength shadowed by sadness, gave the iron people depth beyond mere myth. Folklorists like Jan Harold Brunvand in the 20th century argued that these figures encapsulated collective trauma, societies crafting icons of endurance to cope with grief and the fear of loss. They served as emotional anchors, the first medieval social workers, silently holding the scale between destruction and hope. Across the seas in 14th century Korea, the Chialjianya, translated as Iron Elders, played a similar role. Stories describe these ancient figures as guardians of village gates, appearing during thunderstorms, their skin shimmering with liquid metal as they shuffled forward to shield villagers from tyrants or natural disaster. What these tales reveal is a universal desire to manifest protective strength in a form, both familiar and unbreakable, grounded in nature, but charged with something beyond human frailty. But the Iron People were more than protectors. They were also storytellers and creators. In the old forests of Germany, blacksmith guilds believed the Iron People granted inspiration. The rhythmic hammering sang the song of creation itself, and the Iron People were said to walk the forge at night, whispering design secrets and fueling the artistry of warriors and artisans alike. Grimm's collection captures this in stories where enchanted iron figures animate not only battlefields, but the very crafts of civilization. Indeed, the Iron People carried within them the essence of transition. From chaos to order, wilderness to hearth, the raw forces of nature shaped lovingly by human hands. In this, they became the living embodiments of transformation, urging communities to evolve, adapt, and find courage amid instability. They represented something fundamental, survival through change, endurance bound to flexibility. Yet beneath this behavior lay a cautionary tale, one deeply etched in the cultural psyche. The Iron People were guardians not just of people, but of sacred order and respect toward nature and society. Disrespect them, and consequences followed. In Baltic legends from the 11th century, disregard for the Iron People's laws caused tools to rust overnight, crops to fail, and strange malfunctions to plague blacksmiths' work. This was nature's warning, a reflection of a sacred pact between humanity and environment, mediated by the spirit world. Similarly, tales from 15th century Eastern Europe tell of Iron People becoming restless when communities grew greedy, expanding beyond balance with land or each other. These beings could become vengeful, flooding fields or causing sickness, not out of malice but as stern correction. They became the original environmental activists, long before the term existed, forcing humans to face their impact and adjust behaviors or suffer repercussions. Here, the myth was a form of ancient therapy, confronting societal ills through supernatural metaphor. The stories tell us something else, a bittersweet echo of what vanished alongside the Iron People themselves. With the rise of the Enlightenment and later the Industrial Revolution, these myths retreated. The world shifted toward mechanization and rationalism, erecting steel cities with chimneys that blackened skies but dimmed imaginations. Iron became no longer a magic vessel but raw material, tools and machines stripped of story, cold and lifeless. In rural England, by the 18th century, elderly folk still whispered of the Iron People, but their reverence had curdled into skepticism or nostalgia. The old magic was lost amid factories and smokestacks. As Juliet Cluttenbrock noted, this loss represented more than folklore fading. It was the unraveling of a worldview that saw all living things, stone, tree, metal, as woven into a sacred web of life. Yet even today, in urban spaces pulsing with steel and glass, echoes remain. The Iron People, though silent, live on as metaphors for resilience, seen in the figures of statues standing guard over cities, in machines and technology continually reshaped by human hands, and in the stories of strength that still captivate us. They remind us that beneath cold metal beats a rhythm of hope, history, and spirit. As night deepens and the glow of the forge diminishes to faint embers, we are invited to ponder, what does it mean to be like the Iron People in our time? To carry within us the paradox of strength tempered by compassion, hardness made graceful by flexibility. To reclaim the lost wisdom hidden in the ancient meld of spirit and steel. These creatures remind us that we once lived closer to mystery, when the world still held secrets worth protecting. They invite us to listen, to the sounds of hammer on anvil, the whispered legends carried in the wind, and the quiet pulse of something enduring beneath our feet. After all, every tool, every story, every clang of iron carries a spark of the divine. So perhaps, to be forged like the Iron People is to be shaped by trials yet never hardened into bitterness. It is to embrace our vulnerabilities with courage and to hold memory as firmly as the earth holds metal. In this, their legend remains a living one, waiting not only in dusty scrolls or misty forests, but in our own hearts, ready to be reforged in the fires of our time. And so I invite you, as you walk your own path, to seek those ancient embers, whether in stories passed down, in the craft of your hands, or in the stillness between moments. Because the Iron People's greatest gift was not their unyielding form, but the timeless lesson. Resilience is not to merely resist, but to transform with grace, and in that, to truly live.